My name is Sue. Good evening to Mr. President, fellow Toastmasters and most welcome guests. Called my first speech Just Breathe after a piece of advice I was given some time ago, and I thought I would, and I've taken it out into the future to be able to learn from on future occasions. So I'm going to describe what happened to me when I went to see my sister who lives in Australia. So she's moved to Sydney in Australia about 11, 12 years ago, and I've been quite a few times, and it's a fantastic place to visit. That's absolutely marvellous. It's a hideous journey, clearly, because it takes a long time, but it's a really great place to visit. But the first time we went, we were all sat together, collaborating over a beer, which might be why things developed the way they did. But we decided we were going to take a trip. We were going to take a trip to some place called Magnetic Island, which is up the coast, very near the Barrier Reef in Australia. And my sister and her partner had only just learned to dive, and they thought it would be a tremendous idea that we all went on a dive. I've never done that, and as I said, I'm sure it must have been the beers. I found myself having agreed. So what a great idea, let's do that. Why don't I learn to dive while I'm here, along with my partner? And of course the next morning, everything's agreed. This is what's going to happen. We are going to go up to Magnetic Island and we are going to go on a dive. So Judd and I went off and joined a local dive company that was in the village, at the town where she lived. It's a place called Coogee. I don't know if anybody's been to Australia yet. And it's a beautiful place, fabulous beaches, really gorgeous. There's a fair amount of dive schools there, but we picked this one because it came up with recommendations. And we found ourselves enrolled on a 4-day open water PADI dive course. Started well. I went for the first day. There were 8 of us. We did the theory. I managed to do all that, worked my way through it. Anybody here done diving? Learn to dive? Yeah. So the second day is when you learn, you find yourself sitting in a swimming pool. You're sitting in the swimming pool, all the gear on, you've got the tanks on your back and the mask on your face and an air regulator, and you have to do a couple of tasks before you're allowed to do anything else. There's a couple of things you just have to be able to do to be safe. And one of those is to take your air regulator out and put it back in again, underwater. So we're sat in 3 feet of water, there's 8 of us, we're sat in a circle, and the teacher pointed to the person, they took it out, put it back in again, went round. I couldn't do it. And so I waved no until he went round the rest of them, and they all did it again. And then she moved on to the next task, asked me and implied that I needed to do the same thing, still couldn't do it. And this went on for about 4 times, and I got more and more uptight about it. I just couldn't do it. I just could not take this thing out of my mouth and put it back in again. I knew intellectually I was in 3 feet of water. I could have stood up, but no, I couldn't do anything. Couldn't take this thing out of my mouth. My partner was there too. He couldn't work out what the problem was, but hey. So we stood up. We got to the next task, which was everybody else had to go down and do something at the other end of the pool. And she said to me, "You stay here, you sit down again, and you see if you can do it." And that just got worse. I just couldn't do it. And I got more and more panicked, and I got more and more uptight. So at the end of the session, we all got back on the bus, and we went back to the dive school, and I was distraught. I was absolutely beside myself. It felt like, well, I'd failed, and I'd really failed, and I'd failed in a way that I really hadn't expected to. I'd had a really good first day, I was on holiday, I was having a really nice time, we were going to go and do it, and I just couldn't work out why I couldn't do it. But I thought, I took on my usual response to challenges in that way, and went, stuff it, I'm not going to do it. I don't need to, I'll leave it alone. I don't need to dive, never meant to, this is the first time it's happened to me. And we went off to Magnetic Island, which is gorgeous. It's an island, it's called that because Captain Cook's compass went mad when he got there. They don't know why, but it went mad. They went off in a dive, they dived on a wreck, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it. I just need a glass of water. I didn't do it, I sat on the beach, and I read a book, and that was great. However, when we got back to Sydney, for some reason I thought, I'm just going to give this another go. It's a bit like an MOT, you don't have to pay if you go back quite quickly. So I went in and I said, I'm going to give this another go. Can you tell me what I need to do? And she said, come along to the next session that's in the pool. Took me along. Fair enough. She said, I'm going to give you your own dive buddy, and let's see if that makes a difference. Well, he was 6'2", he was 22, his name was Matt. He was ripped. He was lovely. We stood in the pool. He said, what I want you to do, we'll both just sit down on the bottom of the pool, just sit there, and if you feel ready, take this thing out your mouth. So we did. We sat down. I sat there, probably 2 or 3 minutes, and it was straightforward. I took this regulator out, I put it back in, absolutely no problem whatsoever. Nobody could work out what had happened or why I was just finding it so much easier until I reflected on it, which is I'd just been panicking. I'd just got more and more and more uptight, and I couldn't control my breathing, so I couldn't get this thing in and out of my mouth with it in a breath. So I just couldn't do it. So I came away, you'll be pleased to know, with a licence. I'm an underwater, I can do licensed diver, bizarrely. But I also came away with a particularly useful piece of information, which is when you're having a hard time, when you're uptight or when you're anxious, just breathe. That's what you need to do, and you'll just be fine, and it'll work out. Thank you.